Suddenly, the scorching tea splashed across my face. The sharp pain hit me instantly, leaving me stunned. As I wiped the burning liquid off, I looked up to see Vivian, my mother-in-law, standing there with the empty cup still in her hand. Her expression was cold and emotionless, almost as if she had done it on purpose. I tried to comprehend what had just happened, but the shock left me speechless. This wasn't the first time she had crossed the line, but it would be the last. Her icy eyes locked onto mine, and as her harsh voice echoed again, I knew this was the moment I could no longer endure. "Hello, my name is Sandra, and I'm 32 years old. What was once a hopeful marriage to Derek has turned into an exhausting battle, not just between my husband and me, but between me and his mother, Vivian. Derek and I met in college, both studying business administration, with dreams of building careers in finance. We married 3 years ago, ready to start a life together. However, Derek lost his job 6 months ago, and things quickly changed. I had been working hard in the finance world, doing well for myself, earning a solid income of about $50,000 a month through stock trading. This should have been enough to support both of us, but Vivian wasn't satisfied. She had never truly approved of me, and after Derek lost his job, her resentment grew stronger. Despite the fact that I was supporting the household financially, she expected more. Her latest demand was that I contribute an additional $1,500 a month toward household expenses, even though I was already covering everything: mortgage, utilities, groceries, and more. To her, it didn't matter how much I was doing. It was never enough. One morning, after Derek left for what I hoped was a serious job interview, Vivian cornered me in the kitchen. She sat at the table, sipping her tea, glaring at me as I cleaned the counters. "You think just because you're earning some money, you can get away with not paying your share," she snapped. I paused, trying to keep my composure. "Vivian, I'm already covering all the bills. What more do you want?" "I want you to contribute $1,500 a month," she demanded, as if it were the most reasonable request in the world. "I'm already paying for everything. I don't have anything left to give," I replied, my voice steady but firm. Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Then maybe you should think about leaving. If you can't pull your weight around here, you don't belong in this house." I was stunned. She knew full well that I was the one keeping this household afloat, not Derek, and yet she had the audacity to demand more from me. My patience snapped. "I'm not the one who's not pulling their weight here, Vivian. Maybe you should talk to your son about contributing before you come to me." That was when she lost it. In a fit of rage, she stood up, grabbed her tea, and hurled it directly at my face. The burning liquid hit my skin, but what hurt more was the sheer malice behind the act. I stumbled back, shocked into silence, as she stormed off, muttering something about how I was ungrateful and didn't deserve to be in her family. I knew then that I couldn't stay in that house any longer. I packed my things that very night and left. Derek was nowhere to be found. Another failed job interview, I assumed, and I had no intention of waiting for him to come home. After I returned to my parents' house, the days passed slowly. I hadn't heard a word from Derek, not a single call or message. At first, I was surprised. I had expected at least some sort of apology or explanation, but as the weeks went by, I realized that I meant little to him, or at least less than his mother did. A month passed. My feelings for Derek began to fade, replaced by a sense of clarity. I couldn't go back to a marriage where I was constantly devalued and manipulated. I began to seriously consider divorce. One early morning, the doorbell rang, jolting me out of my thoughts. When I glanced at the monitor, I was shocked to see both Derek and Vivian standing outside, looking as if they hadn't changed a bit since I had left. "What now?" I muttered, baffled by their sudden appearance. "Yes, what can I do for you?" I asked through the intercom, keeping my tone calm despite my growing frustration. "I've forgiven you, Sandra," Vivian declared arrogantly, her voice sharp through the speaker. "Come back home now." "Forgiven me?" I repeated, confused and angry. For what, exactly? I hadn't done anything wrong, and yet here she was, acting as though she had some sort of authority over me. Without waiting for an answer, I ended the intercom call and walked away from the door, my heart racing with anger. But they didn't leave. Instead, they started banging on the door, their voices growing louder and more desperate. "Don't just hang up on us. Let us in," Vivian shouted. Reluctantly, I opened the door, more to avoid disturbing the neighbors than to listen to whatever they had to say. They stepped inside, and I gestured for them to sit down on the living room sofa. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to let them walk all over me this time. "What do you want?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. Vivian leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "You need to come back. It's time to stop acting like a child and return to your responsibilities." My jaw clenched. "You told me to leave, Vivian. I left because of you. Now you expect me to just come back like nothing happened." The argument escalated quickly, Vivian accusing me of abandoning Derek and the household, while I stood my ground, reminding her of the abuse I had suffered under her roof. As the argument reached its peak, Derek finally spoke up, his voice hesitant and shaky. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you." Vivian turned to him, her anger momentarily subsiding. "What is it?" Derek looked down, unable to meet her gaze. I've been out of work for months now. Sandra was the one supporting us. I wasn't contributing anything." Vivian's face twisted with disbelief and fury. "What do you mean? You told me everything was fine." "I didn't want you to worry," Derek mumbled, but his excuse only made things worse. Vivian exploded, her anger now directed at Derek. "You've been lying to me this whole time, depending on her while doing nothing to fix your situation?" I sat back, watching the scene unfold. This was exactly why I had left. I couldn't be part of this toxic cycle anymore. At this point, the divorce seemed like the only way out. I reached into my bag and pulled out the pre-filled divorce papers I had been holding onto for weeks. Derek's eyes widened in disbelief as I handed him the divorce papers. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just stared at them as though he couldn't quite comprehend what was happening. "Sandra, this is too sudden," he finally said, his voice trembling. "Don't you think we should talk about this?" I shook my head, the resolve in my heart unwavering. "I've had weeks to think about it, Derek. You didn't reach out, you didn't care. Your mother has treated me horribly, and you let it happen. I won't go back to that house." Vivian jumped to her feet, the anger on her face evident. "You think you can just leave? After everything we've done for you?" "Done for me?" I scoffed. "Vivian, you've done nothing but make my life miserable since the day I moved in. I was the one supporting the house while Derek was unemployed, and yet you still demanded more from me. I won't let either of you take advantage of me anymore." Derek's face turned red with frustration. "You can't just give up on our marriage because of a few arguments with my mom." "This isn't just a few arguments, Derek," I said firmly. "You stood by and watched while your mother verbally and emotionally abused me. You never defended me, never stood up for me. And now, when I needed you most, you couldn't even reach out to see if I was okay. Vivian was livid, her face twisted in a mixture of fury and disbelief. You ungrateful woman. After everything I've done for you, keeping this house running, allowing you to live here. I was paying for everything, Vivian. I cut her off, my voice cold. And you still wanted more. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of my words sinking in. Derek glanced between me and his mother, unsure of what to say. He knew it was true. He had relied on me while doing nothing to improve our situation. I'm done, Derek, I said, my voice final. Sign the papers. He hesitated, his hands trembling as he picked up the pen. Are you sure this is what you want? He asked quietly, almost as if he was hoping I would change my mind. I've never been more sure of anything, I replied, feeling a wave of relief wash over me as he signed the papers. Vivian, unable to contain her anger any longer, stormed out of the room. You'll regret this, Sandra. You'll regret leaving us. I watched her leave, her threats echoing in the hallway, but I felt nothing. No fear, no regret, just relief. It was finally over. 3 weeks passed, and life at my parents' house was peaceful. The divorce papers had been filed, and I was beginning to move on with my life. One afternoon, I received a call that took me by surprise. It was Vivian. What do you want? I asked, keeping my tone neutral, though my heart raced with anxiety. Sandra, the electricity and gas have been cut off, Vivian said, her voice laced with desperation. I know you're no longer with Derek, but could you at least help us pay for this month's bills, just until Derek finds a job? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything they had put me through, she had the audacity to ask for my help. No, Vivian, I replied firmly. I'm not responsible for your household anymore. You should ask Derek to take care of it. He can't, she snapped. He hasn't found a job yet, and we need help. I suggest you figure it out, I said calmly, my hand hovering over the end call button. I'm not getting involved anymore. You can't just abandon us like this, Vivian shouted, her voice filled with anger and desperation. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm simply moving on, I said, and with that, I ended the call, blocking her number. A few months passed, and life finally began to settle into a new normal. I was thriving at work, focusing on my own goals and happiness. One day, I received a message from Derek. He apologized for everything, admitting that he should have stood up for me. He had finally found a job at a factory, but despite his apology, I felt no need to re-engage with him or his mother. I decided to block his number too. I had moved on, and there was no point in reopening old wounds. 8 months after the divorce, I met someone new. His name was Eric, and he was kind, dependable, and respectful. Everything I had longed for but never found in Derek. We weren't rushing into anything serious, but for the first time in a long time, I felt happy and at peace. As for Vivian, she finally faced consequences for her actions. After I filed a legal complaint about the tea incident, she was charged with assault. The court imposed a fine, and she was sentenced to community service. The legal system recognized her behavior for what it was, abusive and unacceptable. Derek, on the other hand, was forced to pay spousal support, a fitting consequence for his inaction and reliance on me throughout our marriage. In the end, I had gained more than just freedom from a toxic marriage. I had gained clarity, confidence, and a new sense of peace. As months went by, my life took a turn for the better. I had left behind the toxic environment and the constant manipulation, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly living for myself. My career in finance continued to thrive, and I enjoyed the freedom that came with it. Every now and then, I would think about Derek and his mother, but those thoughts didn't linger for long. I had closed that chapter of my life, and there was no going back. Eric and I grew closer, and though we weren't rushing anything, the connection between us felt real. He was patient and supportive, qualities I had longed for during my time with Derek. There were no demands, no endless expectations. For the first time in a long time, I was able to focus on what made me happy. One afternoon, while I was catching up on some work at a cafe, I received an email that sent a chill down my spine. It was from Derek's lawyer. The subject line read, "Request for reconsideration of spousal support." I opened the email, my heart pounding, but as I read through the contents, a feeling of calm settled over me. Derek was appealing to reduce the spousal support payments, citing financial difficulties. Apparently, he had been struggling to make ends meet ever since our divorce, and Vivian's health had taken a toll on their finances as well. He claimed that the factory job wasn't paying enough to cover both his living expenses and the spousal support. I knew what they were trying to do. They were hoping that I would feel guilty and reconsider, but I was done playing their game. I had paid my dues, both emotionally and financially. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, confident that the law would be on my side. A few weeks later, we went to court. Derek and his lawyer argued that he could no longer afford the spousal support due to his difficult financial situation. He presented documents showing his meager earnings from the factory job, while also highlighting Vivian's growing medical expenses. But my lawyer was ready. She pointed out that I had been the sole financial provider for our household during our marriage, while Derek had done little to contribute. The spousal support was fair, considering the years I had spent supporting him and his mother. Additionally, my lawyer brought up Vivian's assault on me, reminding the court of the toxic environment I had endured for so long. As the hearing went on, I could see the frustration growing on Derek's face. He wasn't used to being held accountable, and now that he had to face the consequences of his choices, he was struggling. The judge listened carefully to both sides before delivering the verdict. Derek's request to reduce the spousal support was denied. The court acknowledged that while his financial situation was challenging, it was not enough to warrant a reduction in payments. Furthermore, Vivian's behavior had played a significant role in the breakdown of our marriage, and the judge made it clear that Derek needed to take responsibility for his actions, or lack thereof. As we left the courtroom, Derek approached me, his face a mixture of frustration and desperation. "Sandra, please, can't we work something out? I'm struggling. You don't have to do this." I looked at him, feeling a pang of sympathy, but I quickly reminded myself of everything I had gone through. "Derek, I spent years supporting you and your mother, and all I got in return was disrespect and manipulation. I've moved on. You need to figure things out for yourself." Without waiting for a response, I walked away, leaving him standing there. I wasn't angry, just relieved that I was no longer trapped in a life that had drained me of my energy and happiness. As the months passed, Vivian's health continued to decline. I had heard through mutual friends that she had been diagnosed with a serious illness and that Derek was struggling to take care of her. While a part of me felt sorry for them, I knew that it wasn't my responsibility anymore. I had done my part, and now it was time for Derek to step up. My own life, on the other hand, was flourishing. Eric and I had become closer, and we were talking about taking the next step in our relationship. He respected my independence and supported my ambitions, something I had never experienced in my previous marriage. It was refreshing to be with someone who valued me for who I was, without trying to change or control me. One day, as I was scrolling through the news on my phone, I saw a headline that caught my attention. Local woman sentenced for assault in tea incident. My heart raced as I clicked on the article, and sure enough, it was about Vivian. The case I had filed against her for throwing hot tea on me had finally come to a close. The court had found her guilty of assault, and she was sentenced to pay a hefty fine along with additional community service. The weight of everything hit me at once. Vivian had finally faced justice, and it felt like the last piece of closure I needed. I wasn't celebrating her downfall, but I felt a sense of peace knowing that she had been held accountable for her actions. Months later, as I sat with Eric at a restaurant, I reflected on how much my life had changed. I had walked away from a toxic marriage, faced legal battles, and come out stronger on the other side. I had found happiness in my career, in my relationship with Eric, and most importantly, within myself. I no longer carried the burden of my past. Vivian and Derek were no longer a part of my life, and I was free to live on my own terms. As I smiled across the table at Eric, I knew that whatever the future held, I was ready. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like the video if it resonated with you, and leave a comment below to share your thoughts or experiences. Your support means the world.